What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of the Desai Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm Desai, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of Desai Guys, are Tad Desai. And Tad, how have you started planning your home league draft? Have you figured out draft order and which day you're doing it, and whether you're doing in person, online? How's that coming for you?
Draft date is September 4th, which is actually later than what I wanted. I wanted to do it before, but yeah, exactly. Whatever. But in terms of draft order, no, we still need to figure that out. But no, draft plans are very well in motion at this point.
Yeah, 100%. It's the same with me. Obviously, we're both kind of the co-commissioners of the LAFB league. So we're still trying to fill that out. We're one person short. So hopefully we can fill that out, that we get rolling on that. My personal league, I'm actually short one person there too. So as soon as I get that filled up, they'll get rolling there. But yeah, I'm in a bunch of other leagues that everything has already been in process. I've already drafted for one league. I've already drafted I've actually already drafted for two leagues because they were slow drafts. And so, but yeah, so things are rolling. Tad, we've talked about this so many times already on previous podcasts. That's this is draft season. Obviously, training camp is going on. We're gonna have, as we're recording, we're gonna have more. The rest of the teams are gonna be having their preseason games this week. So we are fully immersed now into NFL action as well as fantasy football action as well. And guys, we say this every single podcast. At least we try to. We might have missed one or two, but we want to help you win your league. So, that's why we are your source for all your fantasy information. I think we said this so many times before, Ted, that's we play in so many different leagues. So, it's you play in an auction draft, so you can help with that advice. I play in IDP leagues, individual defensive players, so I can help with that advice. Yeah, just you have a question, we're here to help you out. You see the ticker down below. Make sure you're interacting with us on social. We want to help you with your drafts. We want to help you in season. We want to help you, out of season. Even once the season's over, you probably still have questions on keepers and, dynasty and all that stuff. So guys, please interact with us. We want to help you. That's why we're dropping all this content for you, to make sure you're winning your leagues and you're coming out more prepared than everybody else in your league. That's the key thing, right, Tad?
Absolutely. And yes, no, that's the whole thing. Is I love giving the more personalized advice, right? Because you can give overall advice of oh, avoid this player, avoid that player. But when it becomes, hey, I am in this round and I need to decide on this guy, that's where I really thrive. And you as well, Mer. So that is where, if you are, especially if you're in Dynasty League, because those tend to lead to some very specific questions. If you need help with that, hit us up. I literally just had a coworker from my last job hit me up this morning about a fantasy football question. That's how trustworthy we are. We promise you, if you listen to our advice, we will get you the championship, unless your name is Alfred Rowe, in which case I will lead you absolutely down the wrong path. But that is a whole other thing.
Lead them astray.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. And of course, we're going to continue with that great content we're going to be talking about in today's episode, Tad. I think, for lack of a better word, just make it or break it candidates. So what we're sort of talking about with this topic in today's episode is that who sort of is on that final season where if they don't perform this year, they're kind of hard to trust in fantasy leagues going forward. And so, yeah, these are, a handful of candidates that we both brought up, obviously, here that we're going to discuss in today's episode that just, depending on how their season goes, they may be reliable going forward. This is a very crucial year. So that's why we labeled it as is it a make it year for them, or is it pretty much a break it year? And just, this is not a guy that you want to be trusting in fantasy leagues, either at the most, putting him at your bench, or definitely possibly getting undrafted, depending on where they are in your draft ADP, obviously, in future leagues going forward here. So Tad, who's one guy that you want to identify as a make it or break it candidate for the 2023 season?
So before I identify this player, I want to actually talk about a player that I almost went with, and that's Noah Fant. I almost went with Noah Fant because he's never done it before, right? He's never statistically proven that he can be
He flashed in his rookie year, but since then, it just hasn't been the guy that we projected him
Right.
to be coming out of Iowa. Both him and Hawkinson were like, man, these guys are going to be so dynamic in the league. And it's happened for Hawkinson. Clearly it has, but just unfortunately for fans, he had a lot of promise too, and he just hasn't been living up to it either.
Well, so that's my point, though, is like he's never really like you said, there's sure flashes, but like he's never consistently shown us that he can do it, right? This is a guy that will go a couple weeks where he shows us he can do it, but then goes another couple weeks where it's like, yeah, okay. And that's Gabe Davis, the wide receiver out of Buffalo.
Yeah. I know he was a consensus pick on this podcast as well. I think I picked him. Maybe you picked him. Maybe we're both in the same boat, but a lot of analysts predicted Gabe Davis was going to break out last year. He played well, but he didn't have that breakout
that's my point.
season.
That's my entire point is like he was picked as like surprise rookie. He was picked as surprise second year guy. He was picked as like now it's his breakout year. Now that he's in his third year. And it's just like it's never happened. So, Amir, are you ready for our favorite game? Let's play over under. Okay.
Your favorite game.
It definitely is. All right. Gabe Davis, career receptions within a season. So just like the season reception. Okay, not
regular
overall.
season.
Like regular season.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So you get what you're guessing.
Yep.
Like what's the most catches he's ever had in the season? Well, hold on. I haven't set the over under.
Okay.
Over under 49.5.
49.5. I'm going to go with the over.
You are incorrect.
Oh, God.
This is why I love this game. So, Gabe Davis, the past 3 years, has had 35 catches, and 48 catches.
48, right 48. At that under.
Yep.
Got it. All right.
But here's the crazy thing. This is why Gabe Davis is such a frustrating fantasy player, is that the opportunities are there. He had 93 targets last year, 93. But he only finished with, like I said, 48 for 836 yards and 7 touchdowns. Not a terrible season by any stretch of the imagination.
Not bad, yeah.
But for this number 2 receiver and one of the most explosive offenses in this league, not what you want to see. So I think that the biggest thing with him is like we cannot keep going off this promise of like, oh, maybe he'll eventually find consistency. That's the difference between him and a guy I brought up earlier is Noah Fant. Noah Fant, we're basing that entirely off of potential. With Gabe Davis, we need to see more consistency. We know he can do it, but can he do it on a more consistent basis? I'm not entirely sure, especially since Dalton Kincaid came in. We've talked about this during our draft live stream, which you can also find on YouTube, by the way. With Dalton Kincaid's skill set, I see them using him as more of a wideout tight end kind of hybrid, more than a traditional tight end, especially with Dawson Knox still there. So I'm a little worried about the addition of Dalton Kincaid. I think that'll eat into his targets. And I've been pretty negative on Gabe Davis here, but I will give, I guess, one positive here. 2 words, my friend. Contract year. Buffalo did not pick up his player option, or I guess team option. But so he is going into like, if I don't do well this year, and this is why he's a make or break candidate, if he doesn't do well this year, like the numbers on his next contract offer are going to vary drastically. So that's the whole thing is like he needs to kill it this year. And I love me a player on a contract year. Very rarely does that hurt you in fantasy football. So he's got some negatives going for him, but he's also got some positives going for him. So I don't know, and I would love to hear your opinion on this. I don't know if he's going to make or break or not, but I think it's a good candidate to kind of keep an eye on.
No, I think this is the perfect definition to make it or break it candidate, because why a lot of people sort of anticipated him breaking out last year was just we saw that playoff game against Kansas City where he scored 4 touchdowns against Kansas City. Everybody's just like, okay, this guy is ready to break out next year. They obviously want to utilize him in their offense, and now him playing opposite Stephon Diggs, that'll alleviate some of the pressure. But like you said, he had a fine season, but just the expectations of breakout.
Finds a perfect word to describe
Exactly.
that.
It's just the expectations, right? Where it's like, if you're picking a guy to break out, that's a guy that you may take a little bit higher than their ADP. You may overreach for some of those players, right? Because it's like, okay, this guy is going to bring a lot of potential to my roster, but that's all it was. It was potential. He didn't realize that potential last year. He played well, but just not well enough. And so, yeah, heading into this year, I mean, Tad, I know you sort of buy into a little bit of trading cap hype. I know you're sort of like super excited by Anthony Richardson and some of the videos that you've
seen. You are fake news, my friend. No, I do not
You
buy
said this on the podcast last week.
I said I was tending to fall into it. I'm not fully buying it. Now you're making me out to be a Anthony Richardson fanboy. Relax there. My God.
Well, regardless, there are a lot of people that read into that training camp hype as far as that's how they plan their fantasy drafts. That's how they get excited for the upcoming season. And Stephon Diggs has said that Gabe Davis is ready to break out this year at this year's training camp. So once again, you take that for what it's worth, whether you want to believe that, whether you don't want to believe that, but still, exactly like you said, the contract year, that's definitely going to play into a factor. The fact that now the expectations are lower, because now his ADP is going to be lower because people are saying that, I don't know what I liked last year. I didn't like what I saw last year. So now I'm going to be, taking maybe a round or two later than I was anticipating before. And so that's where we can sort of see to a little bit more of a breakout than possibility or sleeper potential then, because they're going to be drafted lower. So then you're getting more added value based on where you're drafting them, right? So, but yeah, I could very much see the same thing happening this year that we saw last year, and he'll just lead it to the free agency and just sign somewhere else. And he'll just be that sort of like dependable receiver, but just not a guy that's like, okay, you're building your fantasy roster around this guy. So yeah, 100%. This is a great label for Gabe Davis. Very much a make it or break it candidate. 100%.
All right. So final prediction though, is he going to make it or is he going to break it?
I think I'm going to see the same thing that we saw last year. Like, he's going to be good, but he's not going to be great. So I don't know. I wouldn't say he's going to break it.
No.
Okay, all right, fine.
No in between. No in between's allowed.
All right, fine. Let's break it. I'll say break it then.
All right, break it. All right. So your make it or break it candidate.
Well, what's your definition on Gabe Davis before I get to mine? Do you think he's going to make it, or you think
I think he's going to break it?
Okay.
Like I said, if they did not draft Kincaid, I would have been like, okay, I think there's a possibility for him to make it, but I think Kincaid's going to be much better than a lot of people think he is. If Buffalo utilizes him like I think they will, and if they do, Gabe Davis, his target share is going to be too little.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so I'm going to get to my candidate. I'm going to go to the running back position. Okay. I'm going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the newly signed running backs in the offseason, Rashaad Penny. So I think, Tad, the biggest thing that we can
He's an Eagle?
He is an Eagle, and I hate that we always play this game through text where you're like, this guy's here? This guy's here? I'm just like, do you not pay attention to offseason deal?
Not when it comes to do nothing running backs.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Well, that's sort of the label with Rashaad Penny is that over the course of his NFL career, I think just the biggest label that we've seen with him is just injury prone. Because, Tad, if you look at the last 3 seasons that he's played, out of 50 possible games, Tad, he's only played in 18.
See, that was a chance. That was a chance for you to get me at over under right there.
Yeah, that was a chance.
I guess over 20.
That's your game. I'll leave you to do the over.
Okay, fair enough.
So I mean, clearly he's barely played in any games over the last couple of seasons. But I think the big thing as to why it's a make it or break it season for him, Tad, is that because when he has played, he's been very effective. Because if you look over the course of the last games, if you look at the course of the last 10 games that he played, which are all starts as well, he totaled the following numbers. He had 149 rushing attempts for 1,017 rushing yards to go along with 8 touchdowns. Now, if you're doing that in 10 games, you extrapolate over that 17 games, those are numbers that you want out of a possible RB1 candidate. Like, those are fantastic numbers, but just that's the thing. He's only done that in a 10-game span. Obviously, then he got hurt last year after game 5, I want to say, game 6. Then, obviously, we see the emergence of Kenneth Walker III. He totally breaks out. Rashaad Penny leaves a free agency, signs with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, the one thing that I think could be going for Rashaad Penny is that I know they sort of did this with Seattle too, where they're sort of like using different running backs, where they had Rashaad Penny. They were eventually going to use Kenneth Walker. Obviously, he got hurt, so that's why they went fully with Kenneth Walker. But before that, they were sort of mixing him in with Marshawn Lynch when he came back to the Seattle Seahawks. They were sort of mixing him in with some other running backs as well. But now he's going to Philadelphia, where that's very much the case, where he's going to be in a backfield with DeAndre Swift, who they recently acquired through the NFL draft through a trade. They already have Kenneth Gainwell on the roster, who's been a productive running back for them. And they have Boston Scott, who they like to use as a running back as well. So this could sort of help Rashaad Penny because now he's not forced to be the main guy. He's going to be sort of used in sparing roles where it's like he's not going to be on the field as much to then get those injuries to obviously limit him being on the field. But I think just the thing that I worry about, though, is that because now he's in this sort of committee aspect in Philadelphia, he's never going to be that number one running back that you may want out of him, right? Where he's sort of drafted to sort of be that guy. You look at the running back roster that I listed out with Swift and Gainwell and Scott and obviously Penny. Leaning towards DeAndre Swift will probably be the main running back, main quote unquote running back out of that crew.
Don't fall for it. I did that trap last year. Don't do it.
So we'll see exactly how it's going to play out, but I bet you the touch share is going to be so spread evenly amongst all those guys, obviously. And obviously we know Boston Scott is a New York Giant killer, so I expect the Giants, when those games come around, Boston Scott will be used a lot more in those games. But regardless of that, I think just if Penny can stay healthy, he's a very valuable addition to your fantasy roster, but just he signed a 1-year deal in Philadelphia. That sort of speaks to the fact that it's like, this is sort of a make it break it for him too, because he signed a 1 year, I think it was like $1 million and some change as far as his contract. So it's like, clearly this is like a cheap option to see whether he could still hang in the league or whether he's just labeled with that permanent injury prone sort of label on him. So I think Philadelphia's taking a chance. They'll see what they get with him. But if he gets hurt or if he just doesn't look like the same guy, this is not a guy they could trust going forward. But if we see that guy that we saw over the course of his last 10 games, if we see that Rashaad Penny, 100% he could sort of cash in next year's offseason with another team, hopefully get a lead running back sort of role again and be a more dependable option. But just honestly, for me, I don't see it. I mean, we've seen it for a handful of years, so I'm labeling him as a break-it candidate. I don't think he's going to make it. And if you look at his ADP, he's currently going as the 37th running back off the board. But there's a lot of running backs that I like that are going to go later than him that I like a little bit better to outperform him. So I've talked about Jerick McKinnon. I think he's going to be heavily involved in Kansas City's offense. He's going off the board at running back 40. I like him a lot more. Devin Achane, I've talked about him, his rookie. He's just got sensational speed.
Situational, but good.
I think he's going to separate himself from the pack in that Miami backfield. So I think he's a guy that I really like this year. He's going off as running back 43 off the board. So I like him a lot better. And then your boy, Kendre Miller with the New Orleans Saints.
There we go. Especially with the recent news.
Exactly. Alvin Kamara being suspended for 3 games. That definitely affects things. We're going to see a lot more Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller to start the season. And I think Kendre Miller could really get involved and really separate himself. But just overall, even if Alvin Kamara was playing, we've talked about how we just see the decline with Alvin Kamara. That's why I like Kendre Miller to sort of separate and become a dependable option. So as he's going as running back 50 right now. So I like him as a supplemental running back on my fantasy roster better than Rashaad Penny. But just, for me, I see those 10 games as like there's potential there, but just once again, it's just I'm seeing too much of that negative that makes me hard to trust Rashaad Penny. So I'm labeling him as a break it.
You know the old saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Like that's the way it is with Philadelphia now. Is I am so sick of this Eagles rotation at running back, and like it's literally like playing like roulette. Of like, all right, and the marbles rolling, and I bet Darren Sproles, and then the next year it's like I bet like Garrett Blunt, and it's just like it's every year is a different who's going to be the lead back, and very rarely do you gamble correctly on that. And so I'm totally with you. It's like nothing against Rashaad Penny. He is injury prone. There's nothing we can do to help that, but if he is fully healthy, he should be the lead back there. But the problem is, as you point out, there are 5 other very capable people in that backfield. So if he even is healthy, I don't trust the chance he has to get his fair shot at being a legitimate fantasy option. So honest to God, like when it comes to the Eagles backfield, obviously with their offense, there are several people I recommend very highly. But when it comes to their backfield, I'm not I really do mean this. I'm not touching a single one.
Interesting. All right.
So I guess that kind of answers the question for me is no, I see him as a break as well.
Fair. All right, let's get to another candidate, Tad, that you think could be that is going into 2023 as a make it or break it candidate.
Well, let's go from running back I don't like to running back I do like. And this is a guy I've been hyping up all offseason. And you know what? Now that we're in fantasy season, we're getting some new listeners. I'm going to keep hyping him up. I'm telling you, this is Cam Akers year 2. Spoiler alert, make it. Because
all right,
Sean McVay's offense runs through the running back. Do not forget that just a couple years ago that Todd Gurley was a fantasy pillar for most people. Sean McVay, like, I know he gets all this hype for like, oh, he's such a passing genius, but really his offense runs best. Not saying it doesn't run well when this isn't the case, but runs at its top tier when you have a good running game. And despite their, let's say, rocky relationship, although I will be I will fully admit, I thought something was going to happen there over the offseason. I thought we were going to have some type of trade request, some type of Sean McVay wants him off his team, but it seems like Akers and McVay, after last year's very weird drama, have mended fences. Yeah. So I think that Akers is the guy to go here. And you look at what he did the last 5 games of last season, he averaged 5 yards a carry, and that was without Stafford or Cooper Kupp. So I think the fact that now, well, Cooper Kupp is now up in the air, but now that Matt Stafford's coming back and seems like Kupp's injury isn't too severe, but like now that he has a more stacked offense around him, that will obviously take attention off him. So I see him continuing his hot streak that he ended with the last, 5 games last season where he averaged nearly 18 points a game. So like this guy is my honest God, he may be my favorite sleeper of this entire draft season. So I think that Cam Akers is an absolute, but to, on the flip side of the coin, if he doesn't do anything this year for the Rams, it's kind of like the same thing as, what we're talking about with Rashaad Penny. Okay. The talent's clearly there, but you never showed us, you don't have it. So like, if he doesn't do it this year, I think he's done. I think he's going to struggle to find a place on another roster, but I do think that this is our first make it candidate of this episode.
I feel like I'm having deja vu. Like you said all this before on a previous episode. Is it just me? Like I don't know.
I'd like to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights.
I mean, whatever. Whether you said this before, whether you haven't said this before, I think just everything that you laid out makes a ton of sense. I mean, any offense that sort of can establish that running game as sort of a supplemental piece to the overall offense, they're going to be more effective. And that's sort of one of the few things that the Rams sort of lacked last year, was just they were able to establish a good running game until we saw it at the end with Cam Akers, exactly like you laid out. So if they could sort of take that, and now they'll have Matthew Stafford back. I think Cooper Kupp should be, just fine. He'll probably start the season. Maybe he may miss a game or two based on everything that I'm hearing there, or he may be able to start the season. We'll have to see how that all progresses. But just with those pieces back, they definitely need it, because outside of Cooper Kupp, they're sort of lacking any sort of receiving weapons besides him. So it's like you definitely need to establish that running game then to sort of give your passing offense.
I'm going to tell the LAFB Slack you just said that.
Go for it, man, because I 100% believe that. So, right. I mean, maybe Tyler Higbee, he'll just by pure volume, he'll be more involved, but it's outside of Cooper Kupp. There's nobody else in that offense that really worries me. Like, I mean, there's some potential with their rookie that they drafted, Puka Nacua, out of BYU, if I remember correctly. But just that's what it is. It's potential. We don't know what it's going to be like until they actually get into the regular season, right? So, yes, it's going to be very critical for them to establish the running game. And if Akers can sort of lead that charge with supplemental pieces like Kyron Williams and Zach Evans, who they drafted out of Ole Miss, that could definitely help their offense go along and be a little bit more competitive than a lot of people are pegging them to be this upcoming season. So, yeah, I like Cam Akers to make it as well. He'll be established in that offense. So, yeah, good pick.
Well, and I will say, so you're saying make it?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. All right. And I will say this is, yes, that was a very heavy copy and paste from a previous episode.
I thought so.
Two things. One, there's a reason, because like I say, he's my favorite sleeper. So I'm going to keep pushing him until, you buy into it. And two, it was funny because actually the last bullet point on that copy and paste was, unless Sony Michel blows up, he isn't fighting for carries. Well, Sony Michel is now retired.
Very true.
So that even opens the door even more for Akers, because that means even more touches for him. Because you look at I know you brought up Zach Evans, but I mean, take it from me. I think we said this the last time I brought up Cam Akers. Zach Evans used to be at TCU, transferred to Ole Miss because he thought he'd be the dude at this big SEC school. definitely not bitter at all. And what happened is he was the dude for like 2 or 3 games, got overtaken by a true freshman. So I don't think that like anybody is really in danger of taking over Cam Akers' majority share of the touches, which is even more of a reason why you should trust him to be the first make it candidate of our episode.
Yeah, I definitely like that pick a lot. And so I'm actually going to follow up your make candidate with the make it of my own.
Okay.
I'm actually going to go with the former Ram. And this is the quarterback of the Detroit Lions. I'm going to go with Jared Goff as a make it candidate this year. Okay. And make it or break it type of season. So I think everybody was doubting Jared Goff and the Lions, the fact that they committed to him being the starter. It was like, really, this is the guy that you want to commit to? But I mean, overall, you look at the Lions, there's a lot of promise that you saw. Jared Goff played really well as well. I mean, this is the first time they threw for 4,000 yards since 2019. So he's able to do that last year. He tied a career low in interceptions with 7. And he also threw for the second most touchdowns in his career with 29 as well. So we saw a lot of that, maybe not quite the like number 1 overall pick sort of status, but it's like we're seeing a lot of the potential, which obviously led to him being the number 1 overall pick by the Los Angeles Rams, right? So I think there's a lot of reasons why Detroit committed to him. Yeah, also, Tad, we brought this up before. He finished as the 10th best fantasy quarterback in fantasy leagues last year. And so, I mean, that's sort of saying something. That's like this guy is sort of that sort of fringe like guy that you want as your QB1 for your fantasy leagues here. But I think just the biggest thing that worries me is that can he replicate it? Because now there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of people aboard the hype train for the Detroit Lions with Aaron Rodgers leaving the division. The division's a little bit more wide open. I know a lot of people are buying into Chicago. A lot of people are buying into Detroit. Minnesota is still very competitive. Green Bay, we really don't know what to expect from them, but just it's a very competitive division, this year compared to previous years. And so I know a lot of people are buying into the hype of Detroit. So it's like, can Jared Goff live up to that pressure and live up to that hype to sort of replicate the season that he had last year? Or I think the better thing that a lot of people are expecting, can he exceed it? Because I mean, the big thing, Tad, that we need to realize is that Detroit gave him an extension, but he's tied to a cap space this year and next year of 30 million, or maybe a little bit over that. But here's the big thing that sort of gives Detroit an out is that if they cut him after this season, they only take a $5 million dead cap hit. And this is the bigger thing, Tad, because in the 3rd round of this past draft in 2023, they drafted Hendon Hooker out of the University of Tennessee. And Tad, I remember when I was watching tape of this guy, and I think you were out with your friends, and I texted you. I was like, dude, if this guy was healthy the entire season, in my opinion, he would have been the first quarterback off the board. Like, I mean, I loved everything that I saw out of him. You saw the mobility. You saw the, like, pocket awareness. You saw the good touchability out of his throws, the power ability with his throws, too. I mean, he looked like he had everything. Unfortunately, he suffered that devastating injury that kept him out the majority of the season last year. Yet, he was still drafted in the 3rd round. So that's the sort of looming thing with Jared Goff that's like, regardless of the season that he has, Detroit, like I said, has an out that's like, okay, if we want to go with the younger option, because a lot of people are saying that Hendon Hooker may be good to go this season too. A lot of people were anticipating that it could have been a redshirt year, but it really just depends on how well Jared Goff plays, because they may decide to play that Hendon Hooker card a lot sooner if they're sort of in playoff contention and they need that spark for their offense. But regardless, they have an out. But that all sort of plays back into my previous statement where Jared Goff needs to do everything that he can to have a successful season this year, because whether that's with Detroit, whether it's with another team, if Detroit decides to move on from him, he needs to have a successful season so he can latch on with another team as their starter and possibly get one more big payday before, getting past 30. And, obviously that whole drop off is just like performance and not getting paid enough and all that stuff, right? So this is a very make it or break year. And I think the biggest thing that helps him, he's got a very stacked weapon arsenal on that offense. Because
even with Jameson Williams suspended for 4 games or 6 games or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Like even
with outside of that,
yeah, that's what I mean though, is even with him missing, it's still pretty good. I mean, exactly. He only had Jameson Williams for 2 games last year.
I think it was 3, but he barely performed anyways because he came so late in the season. But obviously he's got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's got Marvin Jones back with the Detroit Lions. Great piece. You got David Montgomery, who they signed. rookie Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs. So, I mean, this offense is going to be able to do a lot of different things. And yeah, Jared Goff's going to have a lot of potential to sort of do everything that he wants to. So like I said, I like him as a make candidate. Whether he's going to remain with Detroit, that's a separate conversation, but I do like him to have another good fantasy season. And I think the big thing, Tad, is that he's being drafted a lot later than people should be drafting him. He is being drafted as the 16th quarterback off the board. I know there's a lot of good quarterbacks. Really? Exactly. It's a little bit surprising, right? Because there's other quarterbacks that are going ahead of him that I like Jared Goff a lot more than those quarterbacks. So you got Dak Prescott. He is the number 10th quarterback.
Like I don't know about that one, but all right.
I like Jared Goff a little bit more than Dak Prescott. I think just the turnover proness, that's a word. I don't know. I'm making it up right now.
So it's a word now. It's a word now.
With Dak Prescott, that sort of worries me. We already talked about the Dallas offense sort of taking a little bit of a shift without Kellen Moore. So I wonder if that's going to change things a little bit. So that just worries me a little bit. I like Jared Goff a little bit more than him. Daniel Jones, he's being drafted he's being drafted as the number 12 quarterback off the board. 100% like Jared Goff a lot more than him. Absolutely. We talked about Daniel Jones and that sort of conservative offense approach that Brian Daboll is taking with that offense. So we'll see if that sort of changes this year, but I'm leaning more towards the latter where it's like it's not going to change enough. So that's why I like Jared Goff a little bit more. And the last guy, Geno Smith, is being drafted as the 14th quarterback off the board.
That's tough. That is tough. Especially with the Seahawks drafting Njigba. That makes it a lot tougher because it's kind of the same thing of like we have decent quarterbacks. Both are surrounded by a very impressive arsenal. So it's just like, oh, that is tough.
I like Jared Goff a little bit more because what I saw from Geno Smith down the stretch, that's not the guy that I saw for the most of the season. Yeah. And so that's what worries me is that last year was a fluke year and we're going to get like, he'll play well, but for him to be drafted ahead of Jared Goff, I don't see that as a good option. So I like Jared Goff a little bit more than that. But yeah, if you're getting him a lot later, Jared Goff, I mean, he's definitely going to give you better value than those three quarterbacks that I listed, maybe some other quarterbacks as well. So I like him as a make-it candidate. Like I said, I don't know whether he's going to stay with Detroit for the rest of his career, but as fantasy purposes for 2023, 100% I'm all in.
Yeah, I like that new focus you put on it. Is like, because like when I first saw this in your notes, when you shared them with me, I was like, dude, no, his make it or break it year was last year and he made it. Like he's made it. He's good. But I like your refocus with this of like, it's his make or break it year with Detroit. Yes. Because we know he's not like his career make it or break it year of like, okay, is this dude out of the league in like 2 years or is he going to stay in it for a while? I think he just bought himself another 5 years in the league with his year last year. So that's fascinating because I knew of the Hendon Hooker situation. I did not know about his cap hit situation.
That was the big thing as to why I brought it up. I was like, this gives Detroit an out if they want to go with the younger youth.
Very interesting. Because should he have a little bit of a down year? Of course, Detroit's going to be like, we'll eat that. And Hendon Hooker, get in here. Because I think Hendon Hooker is going to be his successor no matter what. Because you and I both agree that exactly. Like other than his, let's say, questionable footwork, he's a great quarterback otherwise. So I think that Hendon Hooker is going to be the future of the Detroit Lions. It's just a matter of when does he step in. And I'm going to go. So your final analysis was what? That Jared Goff makes it, but leaves the Lions next year?
Well, like I said, I'm not sure whether he's going to leave
the Lions. I was about to say, you were very on the fence about that.
I think he's definitely going to make it. So he's going to have a good fantasy year. I very much like him as QB1 potential, especially top 12. I don't know about top 10 again, but I definitely like him as top 12 for sure. But yeah, whether he's going to be back with Detroit, I don't know. But I still think he must make it.
Let's assume then if he makes it top 12 fantasy quarterback, I'm with you on that one, by the way. Then he goes back to Detroit. Then, okay, it's just Hendon Hooker has another year or two behind, Goff then. But Goff is good. He's not going to be Detroit's quarterback by 2027.
No, because his contract does end in 2024. It's just whether Detroit wants to opt out one season sooner so then they can move forward with Hendon Hooker. So that's
you mean it ends in 2025 or no 2024? Okay, I see what you mean. Sorry.
So after 2024,
I'm doing the whole 2023, 2024 thing. Like it's just, God damn it.
So the 2025 offseason is when he'll be a free agent. That's what I'm saying.
Football just needs to end right on New Year's Day just to make all this
easier. It's a little tougher.
Yeah.
With basketball and football. Their contracts go into multiple years, whereas baseball is all 1 year.
This is why baseball is easier. Exactly. But no, I agree with you. I think that my prediction is Goff will play out his contract. They won't renew. They'll go with Hooker after that. So yeah, no, I'm with you. I think Goff, another make.
All right. Solid. So that'll wrap up today's episode, a little bit quicker than some of our previous episodes, but that doesn't mean we didn't give you great content. I mean, it was just a lot more focused and just still great content for you guys. And I mean, just like before, what we said at the very beginning of the episode is that we want to help you win your leagues. Like, I mean, whether you're playing in, dynasty leagues, you're playing in redraft leagues, you're playing in best ball leagues. I mean, just whatever fantasy leagues you're playing in, me and Tad have advice for you as far as how we can help you strategize and how you can come ahead of the rest of your opponents in your various leagues to help you win your title. So, I mean, guys, make sure you see their ticker down below. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. You got me at Desai23, Tad at Desai94. You got the show handle at the Desai Guys. And of course, we're on Instagram at the Desai Guys as well. So, I mean, guys, interact with us with any questions that you have because we want to help you win your leagues. It doesn't matter what it is, who should I draft over this guy or this guy? I'm picky at number 8. What do you think my strategy should be? What should I be paying for in an auction draft for this player? Tad's got that advice for you. So, I mean, guys, we will help you with any questions that you have. We want to help you win your titles. We will keep saying it every single episode, even during the season. Like, we'll help you with in-season stuff for sure as well. And best way you can also find out about just the best way you can stay ahead of all your league mates, make sure you subscribe and listen to your podcast. Whether you listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you can listen right on the LAFB Network website as well. Subscribe, always be up to date with our podcast. Make sure if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube as well. Lots of great content on YouTube. It's usually the same between YouTube and podcasts. Sometimes we do have some one-off episodes that may be different on YouTube compared to the podcast and vice versa. So that's why it benefits you to subscribe to both so you're always up to date with content on both platforms. And of course, we always have to give them a shout out, our parent network, LAFB Network. Without them, there would be no us. We would not have this podcast. So make sure you're subscribing to all the great content they're dropping for you. Like we talked about, teams are in training camp. Preseason's right around the corner as well. So they got you covered on the NFL level with the Chargers and the Rams. And of course, college football season's right around the corner as well, right before the NFL season. So that's going to be here a little bit sooner than the NFL season. So they got you covered on the college level as well with the Trojans and the Bruins as well. So lots of great content. Guys, we're dropping articles on the website as well. So make sure you're checking out the LAFB Network website. We got a lot of great articles coming your way too. But guys, to everybody who's already supporting us in all the various ways, whether you're supporting us through social media, whether you're reading our articles, whether you're listening to the episodes, whether you're watching us on YouTube, I mean, guys, anything and everything that you're doing, we can't thank you enough.
And keep sending us those questions over social media because that episode is going to be coming out very soon. So we only have a couple more days left to take in your more personalized questions and discuss them at length within the episode. So keep sending those in. We'll send out another Twitter and another Instagram link very soon. So keep your eye out for that. And like Amir said, it's not even just pre-draft, it's post-draft as well throughout the season. If you need any questions answered, we're here for you. And if you have any waiver wire questions, that will be a weekly segment coming back once the season gets started. So all the weekly segments that really helped you out last year, just get ready because as soon as the season kicks off, Detroit Lions, Kansas City, right? That's kickoff game?
That's the Thursday night game.
There we go. So as soon as that kicks off, we're back to our weekly segments. So keep on tuning in. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, everyone, especially if you're in Texas, because it's 110 degrees, stay safe, everyone.